Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of BTTH Rebirth of Emperor Yang episode number 226 based on novel. So let's start. With the spread of the words, the crowd in the rear immediately calmed down. The eyes full of sarcasm and disdain swept back and forth between Xiao Yan and the man of Yuanfu. On the contrary, it was the sea battle sky and Haimo dust at this time. After hearing the two people's dialogue, one looked cold, while the other looked joking. "Father, look at this." Looking at the two people on the court, the clan leader of the sea shark family couldn't help looking at the sea battle day. However, when he saw the cold look on the sea battle day's face, his words that had come to his mouth were swallowed back by him. "Okay, let's make a quick decision." He took his eyebrows and replied faintly. Immediately, Xiao Yang slowly clenched his fist with his right hand, and his strong strength condensed in the palm of his hand. After the 9-star fighting emperor, the other people in the Yuan mansion looked at each other. Immediately, they took the initiative to withdraw a few steps back and leave the space in front of them. When they looked at Xiao Yang, they always showed disdain. They faced the 9-star Do Di with the cultivation of the 7-star Do Di. The result could be imagined with their heels. I really dare to go next. This boy is really looking for death. Xuekue once killed 10 fighting emperors with his own strength. This boy is stupid enough to promise to fight with him. I'm afraid he will be disabled if Xuekue punches down. Ha ha ha. The people of Yuanfu looked at the two people in front of them with arms and chest, and their words were full of sneers. Although the two people haven't made a move at the moment, they seem to have seen the pain of Xiao Yang's tragic defeat. Of course, not everyone has the same idea. At least, when the patriarchs of the two Dahai families look at Xiao Yang, they can't help but bring some doubt. A person who can be so optimistic about the sea battle day and dare to take the initiative. He can say such uninhibited words in the face of 29-star fighting emperors. This kind of person is either a fool or a person who has absolute confidence in his own strength. And Xiao Yang in front of him can't be a fool. Although I have thought of this in my heart, at the bottom of the hearts of the two patriarchs, I still can't help but doubt. After all, even from their point of view, the gap between Xiao Yang and the 9-star fighting emperor is too huge. No matter how you look at Xiao Yang, there is no chance of winning. Boy, I admire your courage. But unfortunately, many things can't be done by courage alone. His face looked at Xiao Yang in front of him ferociously, and Xuekue sneered. The fighting spirit in his body immediately circulated and merged into various meridians in his body. "You have a lot of nonsense." At the moment when the words were spitting out in Xuekue's mouth, Xiao Yang also made a cold sound. Almost at the same time, with a heavy stamp on the soles of his feet, his body immediately rushed forward. The impact of a short distance made Xiao Yang appear in front of Xuekue almost at the moment of departure. In the face of Xiao Yang's sudden attack, Xuekue's face did not change at all, and the soles of his feet withdrew half a step backward. At the same time, the huge fist also suddenly raised and the fighting spirit surged up, but in the blink of an eye, it had covered the whole arm. The temporary fighting spirit turned into a layer of energy crystal, facing Xiao Yang's fist and blasted up fiercely. Die. The roar of hiss spread, and almost at the same time, the two men's fists hit each other heavily. With a dull collision sound, invisible energy ripples swept through time. Some people who were close subconsciously lost their eyes. Then they looked at it again, and their eyes immediately showed a look of surprise. After their fists couldn't touch each other for an instant, the surging fighting spirit condensed in Xuekue's palm immediately poured out, and the powerful force hit Xiao Yang's fist like a volcanic eruption. The terrible force instantly broke the space around them, and the fierce energy ripples swept outward again. Even those people in Yuanfu behind Xuekue felt the powerful power. They could not help but look serious. With such a fierce blow, they believed that no one could resist under the Huyuan territory, not to mention Xiao Yang, who was only the 7-star fighting emperor. However, the facts once again overturned the conjecture in their hearts. The next scene in front of them stunned everyone present. No matter how fierce Xuekue's attack was, however, when his attack fell on Xiao Yang's fist, it was blocked by a layer of solid golden light. Xiao Yang's body still didn't move. The storm-like bombardment in front of him looked like a breeze blowing on his face without any waves. What? How is that possible? Seeing this scene, Xuekue was immediately shocked, and the look on his face suddenly changed. When he looked back at Xiao Yanji, the latter's body was as motionless as a sculpture, which trembled slightly. Until this moment, the power on Xiao Yang's arm completely broke out, and the strong and extremely powerful power rushed like crazy cattle in a moment, covering the layer of energy crystals of Xuekue's whole arm, which was quickly filled with clearly visible cracks. Then, when the energy crystals were completely broken, the whole arm of Xuekue, it was also twisted uncontrollably. At the same time, there was his ferocious face all over the previous moment. All the bones in the whole arm have been broken, the strong arm muscles are twisted and tight like spasms, and his face is red. Xiao Yang's fist almost completely scrapped his arm. In his current state, if he doesn't have a few months after he goes back, it may be difficult to recover. With the outbreak of the two forces, Xuekue was so vulnerable that it even made people wonder whether he really used his full strength. For the sake of the dignity of the high nationality, Xuekue can't keep his fist. Even the strong at the same level can't underestimate it. However, in the face of Xiao Yang, it can only be said that it is not that Xuekue is too weak, but that Xiao Yang he faces is so strong that he has no room to resist. All the people in front of Xiao Yang were shocked by the battle. Even the heads of the two Dahai families also had a particularly wonderful expression on their faces. They can't imagine that with the cultivation of Xuekue's 9-star fighting emperor, they would be defeated by a 7-star fighting emperor, and it's incredible that they were so simply defeated. Is it really a 7-star fighting emperor who can burst out of this strength? Xiao Yang's fist defeated Xuekue, the 9-star fighting emperor. At the same time, it was like a slap on the faces of the leaders of the sea people in the rear. At the moment, all the old faces became iron blue, and the emotions in their hearts were uncertain. They looked at each other, but they all found that they were full of deep shock in everyone's eyes. This boy. How could he? He is clearly just a 7-star dude. Damn it, he hurt Xuekue. Let's go together and let the boy pay the price. As for the remaining 19 people in Yuanfu, they all showed an unbelievable look. At the same time, they were still angry. With a fierce drink, the bodies of the 19 people were shocked one after another. The powerful momentum forced the time to gush out of the body, and they wanted to attack Xiao Yang again. That's enough. Willing to gamble and admit defeat is the way you choose. If you lose, you lose. Now the most important thing is the underwater virtual environment. You are still fighting here because of this kind of thing. Do you want others to see that Yuanfu trained by our Haijiao family is such a group of unruly people? However, just as the remaining 19 people of Yuanfu were ready to fight, the red-haired middle-aged man, as the patriarch, finally yelled with a gloomy face. Suddenly, all the people, including the people behind him, immediately quieted down. The dignity of the patriarch is vividly displayed at the moment. Then, the middle-aged man with red hair looked at Xiao Yang again. His face turned and immediately showed a kind smile and said, "This little brother, I have offended you a lot. I hope you don't take it to heart. If you can, we still hope that we can give you the matter of underwater virtual environment." As soon as he blurted out his words, everyone present knew that the Haijiao family had admitted defeat. Then, he was the head of the Haishaw family. He also came forward and arched his hands and hugged Xiao Yang. Naturally, Xiao Yang didn't dare to neglect them. After shaking back the blood kuei in front of him, he bowed to them and said, "You're welcome, sir. Since you have promised to master Hai, you naturally have to go all out. As for what just happened, I didn't take it to heart. Please rest assured." Hearing the speech, the two people were secretly relieved in their hearts. Bite Tianjiao, take care of your people and let them know their identity and status. If it weren't for the underwater virtual environment today, I would have killed most of these fools behind you. Don't I forget who I am before I was born? Just at this time, Hai Zhantian came forward again and came to Xiao Yang's side. His extremely cold eyes swept over all the people in front of him. Finally, he returned to the two people in front of him. The words spit out in his mouth shocked all the people present. They had no doubt about the authenticity of Hai Zhantian's words. If they were put in the past, the latter would have been angry. He frightens the heroes with Bloodblade, but after so many years, his temper has restrained a lot. However, this does not mean that he can let these guys act recklessly. When this is over, I'm afraid the naval battle day will make fun of some of them. Xiao Yang, I will temporarily stabilize the space of the underwater virtual environment. You just need to take advantage of this time to enter the entrance of the underwater virtual environment and break the arrays blocking the entrance. In this way, the people inside can leave the underwater virtual environment. Xiao Yang aside, Xiao Xian, who was thin and ethereal, opened his mouth. The latter nodded gently. If it was just like this, it wouldn't be too difficult. Ancestor, are you okay? Looking back, Xiao Yang looked at the ethereal Xiao Xian in front of him and asked with some worry. Hihi, I just lost some soul power. I can recover as long as I rest for a period of time. Now the important thing is the virtual environment at the bottom of the sea. You'd better go in quickly, and later it will change. Yes. Seeing Xiao Xian like this, Xiao Yang stopped talking and nodded heavily. Immediately, his body shape flashed slightly, and in the twinkling of an eye, he had appeared in front of the entrance of the virtual world at the bottom of the sea. Xiao Yang, please. Before Xiao Yang entered the virtual environment at the bottom of the sea, Hai Zhantian once again hugged Xiao Yang. The latter also nodded seriously. Immediately, he turned around and entered the virtual environment at the bottom of the sea. In the outside world, everyone saw Xiao Yang enter the virtual environment at the bottom of the sea, and all the people raised it, with both expectation and worry in their eyes. The success or failure of Xiao Yang is related to the future fate of the whole Hai family. How can the leaders of these Hai families not be nervous about it? At this moment, the only thing that can relax is Haimo Dust. Perhaps it is because of the subtle connection between them that Haimo Dust has an absolute confidence in Xiao Yang. Even Xiao Xian doesn't have this. At least, he can't help worrying about Xiao Yang's safety. When Xiao Yang entered the virtual environment at the bottom of the sea, the world in front of him was filled with white light. The dazzling light made Xiao Yang couldn't help but fascinate his eyes and raised his hand to cover the light in front of him. He didn't gradually get familiar with and adapt until a long time later. When Xiao Yang opened his eyes, the white light in front of him gradually faded, and his sight became clear. A huge energy channel with a diameter of tens of feet, the blue streamer surged towards the depth of the channel as if it were a water flow. The blue light shone brightly on the whole channel. Xiao Yang looked far away at the end of the channel, where was the purpose of his trip to enter the virtual environment under the sea. Without any hesitation, Xiao Yang made a move and quickly flew away towards the depths of the channel. Half an hour later, Xiao Yang's body slowly stopped flying forward. In front of him, a huge array appeared, standing in the middle of the channel, blocking Xiao Yang's way. This is the problem Xiao Yang needs to solve during his trip. The vigorous energy breath comes out from the array. The mysterious rune flashes a bright blue light. The solid array looks like a crystal. In addition, it gives people an indestructible feeling. When he came near, Xiao Yang slowly stretched out his palm, and the fighting spirit gathered in the palm. Immediately, he cautiously pasted it on the array in front of him. Buzzing, buzzing. At the moment when Xiao Yang's palm was stuck on the array, the energy contained in the array immediately condensed under Xiao Yang's palm. Immediately, there was only a low sound. Xiao Yang's palm was bounced by that force. At the same time, Xiao Yang's steps were also subconsciously retreated half a step backward. He raised his eyes and looked at the array in front of him with surprise. Xiao Yang couldn't help but pick his eyebrows. The virtual environment at the bottom of the sea is worthy of the power of heaven and earth. The energy contained in it is much stronger than the ordinary array, but even so, it doesn't mean that Xiao Yang can't break it. Force image resolution. With a low cry in my heart, the huge power hidden in the muscles suddenly burst out. At the moment of holding the right fist, the muscles on the whole arm were raised and raised. As soon as the arm was raised and lowered, the fist wind roared. Then, the mighty giant force poured out like a mountain torrent and bombarded the array in front. Boom! With a loud noise, the whole array shook violently, and circles of energy ripples surged from the array. Unfortunately, although Xiao Yang's attack was powerful, it didn't seem to cause real damage to the array. In this regard, Xiao Yang didn't show any surprised expression on his face. After all, it was the power of heaven and earth. If it was really so easy to solve, it would be too inferior. When one punch was not enough, Xiao Yang fell again in the twinkling of an eye. The blow that was not weaker than the previous punch fell again, and the place where the ripples had set off the previous moment stirred up again. At the same time, Xiao Yang's strong bombardment like continuous raindrops fell again. Boom, boom. After dozens of punches, the whole array shook unstoppably. Finally, the array where Xiao Yang's fist fell, even Shengsheng sank. Finally, Xiao Yang broke the array with his strong physical strength. After breaking the array, Xiao Yang breathed a sigh in his heart. With his strength, even the 9-star fighting emperor can't afford his continuous bombardment, but it can be seen that the array can last so long. However, just when Xiao Yang was breathing and relaxing, not far from his sight at the moment, as this array was broken, Xiao Yang found that there was another array standing quietly not far from this array. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yang's mouth couldn't help but light smoke, and his heart was stunned. Xiao Xian only told him to break the array in order to save people from leaving, but he didn't tell him how many such arrays there were. 1 or 2, or 10 or 100, or more. In that case, even if Xiao Yang has great ability, he can't save people. With this in mind, Xiao Yang couldn't help a burst of stomach fei. He didn't take back his mind until the good film was engraved. His body flashed and came to the next array. Since Xiao Xian can rest assured that he will come in, I believe the array here will not be a big problem. After all, if there are too many, Xiao Xian who knows that the array is powerful, how can he not inform Xiao Yang in advance? Then, another round of indiscriminate bombing began again. In order to reduce time and avoid other changes, this time, Xiao Yang's attack became much more fierce and powerful. Only a dozen fists of violent bombardment forcibly defeated the second array. Sure enough, a third array appeared next. As for this time, Xiao Yang didn't hesitate too much. As soon as he made a move, he crushed the array with strong fighting skills. Just 3 feet of power, but then it was the next one. Until the 7th array was broken, Xiao Yang, who was already impatient, heard the noisy cry from the other end of the channel. Listening to the clear noise coming from his ears, Xiao Yang's eyes fell slowly and fixed on the array in front of him. Through this sound, Xiao Yang can basically conclude that those people must be not far behind this array. So it seems that the channel of the virtual environment at the bottom of the sea is finally going to be opened. He took a deep breath. This time, Xiao Yang didn't use his physical strength anymore. Instead, he raised his hands, linked his 10 fingers and pinched the seal quickly. At the same time, the fighting spirit in his body surged, and quickly condensed into a flame finger above Xiao Yang's head. Mi Huang means. Then, at the moment after the fingers condensed, Xiao Yang's mouth suddenly gave a low cry. The huge fingers hanging above his head also fell suddenly at this moment and bombarded the array in front of him. Boom! The violent bombardment suddenly spread, and the whole channel vibrated violently at this moment. Immediately after that, in a crisp click sound, this almost solid array burst. When the array dispersed, the passage in front of Xiao Yang was naturally unobstructed. At the same time, the noise echoing in Xiao Yang's ears became clear. Looking up, at the end of the channel, a large black shadow is rushing to Xiao Yang's place at the moment. In just a few breaths, it has come to Xiao Yang's near. These people are dressed in 2 colors, one is blue, the other is dark red robes, which respectively represent the Sea Shark family and the Sea Jiao family. However, at this moment, the people of the 2 families who are usually wrong are all gathered together and try their best to run quickly towards Xiao Yang. Seeing Xiao Yang in sight, the faces of all the people immediately showed a look of ecstasy. They had just seen with their own eyes that the array that gave them a headache was broken by the latter, and the road in front of them must have been cleared and unobstructed. How could they not be excited? When they came near, the speed of the people's galloping slowed down gradually, and finally stopped in front of Xiao Yang. Thank you for your help, Elder. Although Xiao Yang's face is not much different from theirs, since the person in front of him can enter here, It means that the patriarchs of their two families have personally appointed him. Such a person can't tolerate their disrespect. Hearing the speech, Xiao Yan smiled, nodded, and asked, "How many sea people are there in the virtual environment at the bottom of the sea?" "Lord Hui, the people gathered here are all the descendants of our two families. There should be no others left in the underwater virtual environment, because we have all gathered at the exit from the moment of sudden changes in the underwater virtual environment. For a full week, there must be no other people in it." Hearing the speech, Xiao Yang nodded at ease. Immediately, he commanded the people to fly away from the virtual environment at the bottom of the sea. At the same time, outside the virtual environment at the bottom of the sea, everyone is anxiously waiting. Until a certain moment, the entrance of the underwater virtual environment, which was originally calm and without waves, suddenly surged up, and circles of energy ripples spread rapidly. Then, a human shadow suddenly rushed out of it, and soon it was the second human shadow, and even more. When a large group of people leaped out like swimming fish, the outside crowd also stirred up, cheering one after another. At the first moment, people of the two ethnic groups with anxious faces showed a look of ecstasy. At the same time, the big stone hanging high in the bottom of their heart also landed calmly. However, among these people, those who have not changed their faces for a long time are the two patriarchs of the two Dahai clans, and the naval battle days suspended in the air and frowned. Until the last person jumped out of the virtual environment at the bottom of the sea, the three of them had not seen the person they expected to see. "What's the matter? Linga, she. Why hasn't she come out yet? Blood Crown. What happened to you?" The head of the Haijiao family ate Tianjiao's eyebrows and stared at the entrance of the virtual environment at the bottom of the sea. Until Xiao Yang finally came out, he never saw his son leave, which made him feel uneasy in his heart. "Did any of you see Hai Linga?" Standing tall, the sea battle sky, with a single worried face, drank loudly. For a long time, the eyes of everyone present involuntarily fell on him. "Have you ever seen the Blood Crown? Has he left the void at the bottom of the sea with you?" At this time, Biti and Jiao also came to see Battle Day. They were both tall and looked at the people below. However, almost everyone frowned and shook their heads. Only after a long time did a member of the Haijiao family hesitate to speak and say, "Hui leader, when we gathered at the exit of the underwater virtual environment, I saw a few patriarchs. However, he didn't stay there for long, and then hurried into the depths of the underwater virtual environment. As for where he went, the younger generation didn't know." As soon as he said this, his face suddenly changed. In this way, the Blood Crown is indeed still in the underwater virtual environment. As for Hai Linga, the granddaughter of Hai Zhantian, although the situation is unknown, what is certain now is that the latter must also be in the underwater virtual environment. In the end, the younger generation of the two Dahai ethnic groups, except the sons and daughters of the two patriarchs, came out, which was a bit of a joke. At present, while the two people feel dignified, both eyes involuntarily fall on Xiao Yang again. Feeling the eyes of the two people, Xiao Yang had to smile helplessly in his heart. At present, the young generation of the Hai nationality has just escaped from the danger. How can they enter the dragon's pool and tiger's den again? Therefore, the burden of looking for people naturally falls on him again. "Xiao Yang, I'm afraid. I have to trouble you again." Naval battle sky frowned tightly. Naturally, he also knew the danger in the virtual environment at the bottom of the sea. Once Xiao Yang entered, if he couldn't find the two people in a short time, don't say he couldn't save them, or even his own life. Ordinary people can't do this. However, Xiao Yang is not comparable to ordinary people. "Well, I'll go in again, but I have to explain in advance that I'm not completely sure I can find them. If I can't find them in the end, I'll exit the underwater virtual environment by myself anyway." After taking a deep breath, Xiao Yang nodded. At the same time, he also said the worst result. Although he would do it, it was also a loss-making business on the premise of ensuring his own safety. Smell speech, see Battle Day and Bite Day Jiao also nodded, which they can understand naturally. But what they hope in their hearts is that Xiao Yang can safely take Xuemian and Hai Linga out of the virtual environment at the bottom of the sea, which is the best result for both sides. Immediately after that, Xiao Yang turned his head and wanted to enter the virtual environment at the bottom of the sea again, but at this time, Xiao Xian stopped him. Xiao Yang, I need to remind you that there is not much left of my soul power, and the pressure brought to me by the seabed virtual environment is increasing. I can't guarantee the stability of the internal space of the seabed virtual environment. Therefore, you must come out within 7 days when you enter the seabed virtual environment. Otherwise, once it exceeds 7 days, I'm afraid I will no longer be able to support the space of the seabed virtual environment. Then, you will also be sealed inside, and no one knows what will happen in the underwater virtual environment next. Therefore, you must focus on yourself as soon as possible, even if you can't find anyone. Xiao Xian opened his mouth with a particularly dignified tone. Hearing this, Xiao Yang also nodded heavily and said in a deep voice, 7 days. That's enough. Don't worry, ancestor. I'll come out. With a little smile, Xiao Yang turned around and disappeared into the entrance of the underwater virtual environment again. At the same time, his smiling face immediately became heavy. Entering the channel again, Xiao Yang adapted faster than before. When he opened his eyes, he immediately started and flew away towards the depth of the channel. In 7 days, he had to find the 2 young masters of the sea family in the virtual environment at the bottom of the sea. It was easy to say, but it was even more difficult to do it. The virtual environment at the bottom of the sea is a world of its own, and the space in it is not small. Looking for one person in thousands of miles of mountains and rivers is not like looking for a needle in a haystack. What's more, it's still looking for 2 people. Coupled with the changes in the virtual environment at the bottom of Shanghai, the environment has been damaged, which greatly increases the difficulty of Xiao Yang's looking for someone. 2 hours later, Xiao Yang finally reached the end of the channel. Immediately after passing through a blue light curtain, the world in front of him suddenly opened up. In the vast and boundless world, there are mountains, green mountains, and forests all over thousands of miles, and surging rivers lie across the mountains and forests, stretching straight to the endless distance. However, this beautiful scene has changed greatly at this moment. The mountains toppled, the jungle overturned, and even the river was blocked by inexplicable forces. The whole world was full of wild and irritable roars. Birds and animals rushed around between heaven and earth. Even Warcraft turned its eyes to Xiao Yang, and immediately roared and fought. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yang immediately frowned and shook his backhand, and the Xuanzhong ruler immediately fell into his hand. The huge ruler swept across, and the broad ruler flew out of the oncoming giant beast, smashing it into the mountains and forests below, attracting more Warcraft. Seeing such a scene, Xiao Yang couldn't help saying in his heart, "It seems that the trouble he will face is not only the environment of the world, but also these headache Warcraft. In this way, the difficulty of finding people will be greatly improved." For the Warcraft coming again, Xiao Yang lifted the huge ruler in his hand, waved his palm close to the ruler face, and Sen's white flame immediately climbed up the huge ruler, and then turned around to sweep it. The magnificent ruler suddenly swept out and blasted the oncoming Warcraft again. However, these Warcraft seem to be endless, as if the waves rushing to the coast are higher and longer. After more than a dozen times of resistance, Xiao Yang's heart can't help feeling heavy. Somehow, these guys worked together to put their cruel killing intention on him, a human being. Maybe it's because he doesn't belong to this space. After all, it is because of them that the world will be ruined like this. All this is also caused by these outsiders. Sorry, I can't make up for what happened here. I'm not here to find you. When I find those 2 people, I'll leave. Frowning and shaking his head, Xiao Yang put away the Xian heavy ruler. When another wave of Warcraft rushed, his body suddenly twinkled and turned into a breeze. He passed through here at a strange speed and soon disappeared between the heaven and the earth. A moment later, Xiao Yang's body fell on the top of a mountain. It was relatively safe here. At least there would be no Warcraft nearby. When he sat down, Xiao Yang closed his eyes slightly. In the center of his eyebrows, the surging soul power immediately spread out. He quickly explored the 2 special breath in the mountain forest. When entering the virtual world at the bottom of the sea battle sky and the devouring sky jiao specially gave Xiao Yang the ornaments with their breath, which increased the chance for Xiao Yang to find them. However, the vast expanse of the virtual environment at the bottom of the sea was obviously unexpected by Xiao Yang. Rao, with his soul power, did not find the breath of the two people after some exploration. That is to say, he must find another place and search again now. In addition, it doesn't rule out the possibility that those two people may move around at any time. In this way, Xiao Yang's probability of finding them will be smaller. In addition, in case these two people have fallen under the siege of Warcraft. Xiao Yang didn't dare to think about this easily, nor did he want to think about it. After all, he entered the virtual environment at the bottom of the sea, not to see the worst result. The exploration was useless. Xiao Yang had to get up and continue to move towards the depths of the virtual environment at the bottom of the sea. At the same time, the soul power was also searching and exploring everywhere. Unfortunately, the exploration was useless, but it attracted the attention of many powerful Warcraft, which also added a lot of trouble for Xiao Yang to find people along the way. At the same time, the sea battle sky and the phagocytic Jiao outside are also waiting anxiously. Time passed little by little. In the twinkling of an eye, Xiao Yang had entered the virtual environment at the bottom of the sea for 4 days. However, Xiao Yang still didn't know anything about the tracks of those two people. Until a certain moment. In the underwater virtual environment, Xiao Yang is floating high in the air, frowning and watching around. Since entering the underwater virtual environment, he has been deepening. From his current distance, even to the entrance of the underwater virtual environment, it will take a long time. If he continues to look for it, I'm afraid the time left for him will be more urgent. After hesitating for a long time, Xiao Yang still clenched his teeth, raised his eyes, and rushed away again. No matter how, he must stick to that last moment. Boom! At this time, there was an earth-shaking bang somewhere in the seabed virtual environment. Suddenly, it sounded like thunder through the seabed virtual environment. After a while, Xiao Yang's body suddenly stopped, and a pair of sharp eyes looked in the direction of the sound. He could not see the specific location of the sound, but he could feel the strong smell of energy explosion. Therefore, Xiao Yang almost didn't think much in his heart, so he immediately set off and rushed over there. Whether it was one of the two or not, but if it was possible, it was worth Xiao Yang trying. Just a moment later, Xiao Yang's body shape appeared in the high altitude of the place where the roar came from. Looking down, it turned out that the place where the sound came from was a small valley. At this moment, a young man dressed in the costumes of the Sea Jiao family was facing a group of Warcraft surrounded again. A heart falls to the bottom of the valley like those stones that fall into the valley. In addition, Xiao Yang also found that there was a surging energy breath in the depths of the small valley, and the energy between heaven and earth was gathered. It is not difficult to imagine that these Warcraft animals gathered here because of the inspiration in the valley. Hey, there's really no place to find. It takes no time. I didn't expect the two to be together. It saves a lot of time. With a smile in his heart, Xiao Yang couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. From the energy state in the valley, it was obvious that the man was at the critical moment of breakthrough. If he was disturbed at this time, I'm afraid not only the cultivation breakthrough would be blocked, but even his foundation would be affected. However, looking at the man, he looked determined. It seems that he vowed to help him block these coming Warcraft. Roar. At this time, the Warcraft surrounding the man below also launched an impact again. More than a dozen Warcraft attacked together. Rao was the cultivation of the young man's 9-star fighting emperor, but he could not resist it. However, after a few breaths, the young man's attack was directly crushed. Then, the other Warcraft directly bypassed the young man, straight into the small valley. Damn it, don't want to go in. Seeing this scene, the look on the young man's face suddenly changed. Regardless of other Warcraft around him, he wanted to rush towards the entrance of the valley. However, he was patted by a Warcraft nearby and had to watch those Warcraft enter the valley with unwilling eyes. Bang! However, at this time, between heaven and earth, a black streamer was like a meteorite falling, and suddenly fell on the head of the first Warcraft. The terrible force burst out in time. Before the Warcraft could make a scream, it was instantly killed by this force, and those Warcraft that followed were also huge black feet waved immediately. It was blown out by Sheng Sheng. But in the blink of an eye, the entrance of the valley was cleaned by this inexplicable force. Then, in the shocked eyes of the young man, the smoke dispersed. On the head of the dead Warcraft, a young man in black stood tall, with a smile on his mouth. His eyes fell on the former and asked with a smile, "Are you the Blood Crown?" "Exactly. Exactly. Who are you?" The young man got up from the ground in a panic. Ignoring the pain from all over his body, he asked with a surprised look, "My name is Xiao Yan. Hanshan and Bitianjiao entrusted me to come in and save you. The one inside should be Hai Linga, the granddaughter of Hanshan." Relieved, Xiao Yang nodded, raised his chin and asked again, "Yes, but she is now breaking through the critical moment, so please make sure she will not be affected." As soon as he heard that it was his father and the man from the sea battle day, a happy look suddenly flashed on the face of Blood Crown. However, immediately, a worry surged in his heart. He frowned and looked at the entrance of the valley, showing a worried look in his eyes. Aware of this, Xiao Yang couldn't help grinning. The person of the Sea Jiao family said that the reason why Xuemian returned to the depths of the virtual environment at the bottom of the sea was probably for the sake of Hai Linga. Then, the Blood Crown jumped away from the attack of Warcraft behind him and came to Xiao Yang in the twinkling of an eye. With a wave of his hand, a long halberd immediately fell into his hand. When waving, there was a roaring sound of breaking wind, which seemed quite powerful. "Please, Mr. Xiao Yang, guard here with me for the time being. After Linga's cultivation breakthrough, we will leave here together." The face of the Blood Crown who returned to God had become cold and solemn. With a move in his heart, the fighting spirit in his body immediately gushed out, climbed up the long halberd and shone with sparkling water. It seemed that a layer of strange scales appeared on the long halberd. Seeing this, Xiao Yang couldn't help laughing. At the moment, most of the fighting spirit in the Blood Crown has been consumed. I'm afraid he can't support it for too long. If he gets hurt again, it will become his next burden. Hehe, I think you'd better reply to the fight first. You can't support it with your current state. With that, Xiao Yang threw a pill to the latter. Immediately, without waiting for the Blood Crown, he first took a huge ruler and stepped heavily on the soles of his feet. The giant beast body at his feet immediately sank a little. At the same time, Xiao Yang's body turned into a black streamer, and he rushed into the pile of Warcraft. "Mr. Xiao Yang, you are alone." The face of the Blood Crown who returned to God suddenly changed. He hurried to open his mouth to stop Xiao Yang. However, before his words fell, he only saw those Warcraft, which were like dolls. They were ruthlessly blasted out under Xiao Yang's mysterious ruler. The whole process didn't even have the power to fight back. It was stunned. It's impossible to do such a war. However, it is Xiao Yang to create possibility and break the convention in all seemingly impossible. In a short moment, all the Warcraft in groups outside the small valley were swept away by Xiao Yang. They either died or had no power to fight again. What's more, at the first sight of Xiao Yang, they trembled and crawled on the ground, howling constantly, and even their fighting intention was forcibly wiped out. Xiao Yang's terrible strength also shocked Xuemian's heart. The whole person was stunned. He watched those Warcraft retreat and looked at the dead Warcraft everywhere. He really couldn't imagine that this terrible achievement could be achieved by a young man who seemed to be a little younger than him. It's incredible. With Xiao Yang's suppression, those Warcraft did not dare to come forward again in a short time. Therefore, Xiao Yang turned and entered the valley behind, and then the Blood Crown followed. After they entered the valley, they saw that the small mountain cave was surrounded by the mountains on all sides. Only the top could see a small piece of sky. There were also many slits between the mountains on all sides. The energy of heaven and earth entered here through the exit there and directly above. Because the width of those slits is too narrow, the external Warcraft cannot break in from there, and the entrance above is too high. Therefore, the only way for Warcraft to enter the valley is the entrance of the valley behind Xiao Yang and Blood Crown. Seeing the strange terrain here, Xiao Yang could not help nodding. This is a good place to make a breakthrough. It can not only ensure to absorb enough energy from heaven and earth, but also reduce most of the trouble and avoid the impact on the breakthrough process. It has to be said that the two people found a good place. Unfortunately, this underwater virtual environment incident, those Warcraft animals were much more violent, so they noticed the energy changes here, which brought trouble to the two people. If Xiao Yang hadn't arrived in time, I'm afraid the two people would have lost their lives at this time. Glancing away, there was a natural bluestone in the middle of the valley, which was just illuminated by the sunshine from all over the valley. At this time, a beautiful girl in a long blue dress sat on the bluestone with her beautiful eyes closed. With the breath and breath between her pretty nose, the energy of heaven and earth gathered in the valley, it is also constantly being absorbed and refined by it. At the same time, the breath in the girl's body also increases rapidly. It seems that in a short time, the girl will be able to make a breakthrough. Before that, I'm afraid all the troubles during this period have to be dealt with by Xiao Yang and Xuemian. After an explanation, Xuemian found a place in the valley and began to refine the pill Xiao Yang gave him just now, while Xiao Yang flashed and appeared at the top of the valley in a twinkling of an eye, looking down at the environment outside the valley below. At a glance, in the mountains and forests in the distance, a warcraft with different shapes is quietly approaching here, and the low roar is constantly heard. These guys seem to be communicating with each other. Then, when countless warcraft came to the bottom of the valley, this time, they didn't rush to the valley, but climbed the rock wall of the valley and rushed frantically to the top of the valley. The goal was Xiao Yang. Soon, these monsters came to Xiao Yang's body. Their huge body covered the periphery of the whole valley. In addition to these, there are still countless warcraft attacking here in the distant mountains and forests, and their targets are all Xiao Yang, who is standing high in the valley at the moment. Countless warcraft rushed up the slope of the valley, and the invisible momentum was enough to frighten people. However, Xiao Yang, in the face of such a situation, did not have the slightest fear on his face. Instead, he was cold. He held a giant ruler in his hand and thought. The forest white flame immediately rose, waved the giant ruler and threw it at a warcraft coming in front of him, head down. This video will end here.